And welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke, and it is now the 4th of October, 2024. And it is a foggy morning out. It's gotten to be very foggy. I was able to see the sun start to come up. It was really beautiful, and then all of a sudden, those fog came in. Good morning, Joanne. Just commenting on the morning fog, because it's very, it just rolled in all of a sudden. Right now it's, and good morning, Sam. Or again, good afternoon. I'll have to remember where everybody is. Yeah, I got up, what time did I get up? Did I get up on time today? I guess I was in a reasonably timely this morning. Jenny, good morning, Jenny. Yeah, it's like I said, it's just started out really nice and now it's gotten really foggy. And, yes, another day of weird connections I have with Preach. Let's see what the message is today. Oh, yes. Yeah, we'll check this out. And good morning, Pat. And my hair looks amazing, by the way. Thank you. I had it done yesterday. Yes, I did go to the hairdresser yesterday. And actually, it ended up being that was the only thing. I had a whole day of things. I had grading I had to get done for my classes. I had stuff to do. And then I had stopped. There's a restaurant that's not far from where I get my hair done. And I know the owner. But this time I was like, you know what, even if she's here, I don't want to bother her. I was reading actually, I never know if I can say his name right. I think it's Zaz, S-Z-A-S-Z, Thomas Zaz. And he has a book called Ideology and Insanity, which is quite interesting. And he's one of the people I've heard of many times that's kind of got these kind of, because he doesn't believe that he doesn't believe psychology or psychotherapy is medical. He thinks actually it's actually more of he thinks of it as more of a social, ethical, and moral thing. Like that psychology is really just about how the individual connects with society. Like how, and the fact that, depending on what people have decided is normal behavior is how, and then you end up being classified based on whether society thinks something is just normal or not. I mean, I'm just sort of getting into his thing. But anyway, I was doing some reading, so I thought, well, and then they put me in the back room, which is actually my favorite room of the restaurant. And apparently everybody there knows me, even though I haven't been going there a lot lately. So next thing I know, I get a text from my friend. She's like, "Are you here? Are you in the restaurant?" She's like, "I'm going to come downstairs." I guess they had a hot water heater burst or something. And so they were talking to the insurance guy and everything. And so she was like, "I'll be right down." So she came over and I ended up talking to her until like almost 2:30. And so I was like, well, there goes my afternoon. So I didn't do much yesterday. And of course, Pat and I met last night. So, but that was about it for the day. I was just, but yeah, I did get my hair done. And yet another Joanna, who does my hair. And she also fixed my fringe too, which was kind of, I don't know. I usually cut myself, and she says, "Yeah, this is the first time you screwed it up." So, so anyway, she fixed it for me. So all is well. Now the topic that came to me today, okay, I was pulling some runes this morning, and the rune that I pulled was Ehwaz, okay? And Ehwaz the way that, and again, I'm sure there's other ways that this rune is transliterated or discussed in other places. Well, the runes seem to have more than one way that you say them, but I go by Ralph Blum, which again, some of my friends who do runes don't care much for him or don't care for his book, but it works for what I'm trying to do. And this is a rune of aversion, okay? But there's a phrase that he has in his book that is what I kind of, morning everyone, looks great. Oh, thank you, Jenny. It was there. He had put in, what he said was, more than doers, we are deciders, okay? And once the decision is clear, the doing is effortless, okay? He made that statement, and that was the thing I was going to talk about today. But before I get into that topic, I did want to talk a little bit about, this is October. I said I was going to do a ghost story of the day. And I found one, there was one actually back to our scary stories collection. There was one that I was reminded of that's called Room for One More. Now, when I was rereading the story, I said, oh, I've seen a version of this story someplace else. Now, it may be, he has notes in the end about where all these stories come from. So this could be, let's just see if we have a note on this. I'm just curious to know where this story comes from, because it's not, there's not the only one. Let me just see if I can find it. My eyesight is not very good. I have to kind of do this thing. I'm curious. I'm just curious to know where. I know it was the first place that I've seen it. I just don't know if that's the first place that that he has seen it. And yeah, I don't know. I can't find notes on this one, so maybe. But I'm sure there are notes in here, and I'm just not being able to see them. Anyway, we're not going to delve into that. So I'm going to tell you this story. And there's another version of this story, and I went looking for it this morning by E.F. Benson. I have every ghost story anthology. Good morning, Suda. Sorry, I didn't get to see you when I was staring down at my book. Called Night. This one's called Night Terrors by E.F. Benson. On PC today and have limited features. Oh, okay. And I knew this was another story. I said, I know this is a Benson story, and it's one called The Bus Conductor. And this is actually the same exact story. It's just told, he's telling it from an American location. The original story is interesting because where the story ends is on the corner of the station by King's Cross St. Pancras. There's like a corner there. And that this is where the action of this story ends up taking place. So, and I always liked that because I'm extremely familiar with the corner of the station by King's Cross St. Pancras. I mean, it seems like that's like my most, oh, thank you. Yeah, everybody likes my hair this way. I prefer it curly, but yeah, she had just done my hair. Yeah, I just had my hair done the other day, yesterday actually, with Joanna, who's my American hairdresser. I know that sounds so posh, doesn't it? I have a London hairdresser and I have an American hairdresser, but I haven't seen my London hairdresser since January. She's the one that does all the freaky effects, like with the stuff in it, and then she does something called Illumine on my hair, which makes it really like, I think Joanne has talked about the halo of the fire effect. I mean, that's what Ernie, who's my stylist in London, that's what she does. But Joanne, they basically use, now I think they use different coloring. I used to use Goldwell, and then now they use something else, some other really posh thing, like, grown organically in Italy, whatever. That's the color that they use over in London now. But the Goldwell is a really good color, so thank you. That's why I go there, because she knows how to match. She's a really good colorist, this woman that I go to, and but she's great. I think I was telling Pat this last night, that when in her shop, like at her chair at her station in the shop, she's got this little sign. It's like one of those signs that's like little embroidered sign. It's got the little scissors on it, but it says, "I will cut you," and I love that sign. It's kind of, it's just. Yeah, it's kind of her person. Well, I don't want to say it's her personality, but she is somebody she's a very nice person. She really is. But she's not nice in this kind of way. She's just like, "Hi, how are you today?" She's so worldly. I love it too. Love good fall look for spring. Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm worldly if you consider the UK in here kind of this way. Thank you, Pat. And Pat's gotten her hair done too, and it looks very nice also. So not that anybody can see it on here, but it looks nice. So anyway, what I was saying about this story is that that's one of the things that stuck out in my mind, is that not in the story I'm going to read to you, but the other one, it was in, it ends at the corner of King's Cross St. Pancras. So, yeah. So anyway, I did, so that's just a spot. I'm like, yeah, I can actually visualize that in my mind, because I know what that looks like, and I could see how something like this could potentially happen there. Although the original story is set more in Victorian times, and that one's too long. I mean, it's not a long story, but it's too long to read, so I'll read the shortened version. A man named Joseph Blackwell came to Philadelphia on a business trip. He stayed with friends in the big house they owned outside the city. That night they had a good time visiting, but when Blackwell went to bed, he tossed and turned and couldn't sleep. Sometime during the night, he heard a car turn into the driveway. He went to the window to see who was arriving at such a late hour. In the moonlight, he saw a long black hearse filled with people. The driver of the hearse looked up at him. When Blackwell saw his queer, hideous face, he shuddered. The driver called to him, "There's room for one more." Then he waited for a minute or two, and then he drove off. In the morning, Blackwell told his friends what had happened. "You were dreaming," they said. "I must have been," he said, "but it didn't seem like a dream." After breakfast, he went into Philadelphia, a city that I also know, by the way. He spent the day high above the city in one of the new office buildings there. Maybe this is my friend Dave when he used to work down there. Late in the afternoon, he was waiting for an elevator to take him back down to the street. But when it arrived, it was very crowded. One of the passengers looked out and called to him, "There's room for one more." He said it was the driver of the hearse. "No thanks," he said. "I'll get the next one." The doors closed and the elevator started down. There was shrieking and screaming and the sound of a crash. The elevator had fallen to the bottom of the shaft and everyone on board was killed. Okay, so this is like a premonition ghost story. Now, in the Benson version, there's a guy who is doing business in London, and he's staying in a in a house kind of outside of the greater London, the city area. And same thing happens. This hearse pulls up, and he thinks, "Oh, did somebody die during the night?" And then the driver says, "There's room for one more," and he's just like, "Okay," and he closes the window. And the next day he's down, and there's a very crowded bus in that in Benson's version, very crowded bus in London, and and he's in a hurry, but he sees the bus is absolutely packed, and I've also seen that condition in London as well. But it was just where the driver says, "There's room for one more," and he remembers what he saw the night before, and he goes, "No thanks, I'll wait for the next bus." And as soon as the bus took off, it's like it crashed and then it killed everybody on the bus. So, yeah, creepy kind of a story. It's a short one. Like I said, I didn't want to take ages telling a story today. And not as fun as the first one. The first one's like the most fun, I think. I probably should have saved that one. But it's but yeah, this was just an interesting one. The room for one more, where somebody has a dream or sees something, sees a vision. So really what it is it's a warning of death is what that kind of a story is. And it's really quite interesting. But of course that's the thing. And to me it's an interesting commentary on dreaming too, because we always think that we're dreaming, or we always think that things that show up that are anomalous or out of the ordinary are somehow not something we have to pay attention to. It's merely a dream, right? And but yeah, it's creepy. And so but there are actually real world instances. Good morning, Melissa. There's real world instances of stuff like that happening. You do hear about this. I might have mentioned this before, or maybe I just mentioned this in intuitive development class, but there used to be something that they did in Britain, and I don't know if they do it anymore, but it was like a dream registry, where if you had a particularly profound dream, you could register it. And especially if you thought that it felt like a premonition of some kind. Now, not everything that people registered came true, but there was several times when they actually went through when a major disaster would happen. Like I think one of them in particular they were talking about in this documentary was there was a mining disaster in a Welsh town. Like there was a mine that caved in, and I think it was like underneath a school, and like it was something with school children getting killed. I know there was a big. I've heard about that incident, but I'm not getting the details right in my head right now. But a number of people had dreamed about that happening before it happened. So, yeah. And so, interesting, right? Like I said, this is my time of year for this. Actually, speaking of Benson, I have another little story about Benson because there's a story in here. Was it Benson? Or no, sorry, it's not Benson. Yes, and Pepper dreamt it. Yeah, it was just reading what Pat says here. It's people dreamt it. I was like, Pepper, okay. People dreamt it. Yeah, exactly. And so this one, so it was Edith Nesbit. That's the one. I'm thinking they both start with E, so the E just kind of stuck in my head. Edith Nesbit wrote a story called Man Size and Marble, and maybe I'll share that one with you a different day. Because I also have another personal association with that particular story, because I also saw where that story took place. I don't know, that'll be fun. It'll be kind of ghost stories that are connected to places that I've actually been to. I don't know that I can maintain that all month, but we could try. But the best story of this one is actually the first one. It's called The Room in the Tower. It's just this kind of creepy story that kind of is very, very circular. It's about a dream that goes just around and around and around until we get to finally, towards the end, the guy sees the place that's in the dream and says, okay, is this thing that I saw in the dream, like, how's it going to play out? How's it going to happen? So, but it's really good. It's really well done. I also, when I was in, I was in Oxford over Christmas, and I found this book, so anybody who's looking for a recommendation, this is The Green Man of Eschwood Hall, and this is by Jacob Kerr. This was actually a really good read. I actually read it in an afternoon. I took it with me when I went out to lunch, because when I was there, I was just, I was there to work. I wasn't there. So in between working, I just found I took an entire afternoon and just read this book. It was really good. It's really well written. It's very descriptive, but it's very modern. This is not like Victorian or anything like that. And the character development's really, really good in it. I don't want to give away what it's about. I mean, the idea that there's a green man is definitely here. It's like this family that moves into this. They're asked to come in to be like caretakers or to be a handyman. This family from Northern England. And they move into this kind of crumbling and decaying castle. And they're only allowed to stay in like a couple of different rooms because the dowager who owns it is in another part of the house. So, there's this whole thing about the girl who is living there and her relationship to her parents and, how she feels about her siblings and her little brother. And but then she starts to see this fairy that comes at night and wreaks all this havoc, and so then she goes out, she hears about the Green Man, and she goes out, ended up making like pacts with the Green Man of the forest. It's a really good read, and it's really good. It's really atmospheric. It's one of those reasons I said I need an excuse like to have a writing residency in England so that I can write stuff like this. Now I've seen enough that I know I've been to a lot of different places. But it would be nice to just be in a location and be able to write it, because then you don't have to rely on memory. I don't have to throw my Americanisms in. I've had friends in England who have edited some of my work and told me when I get things wrong, especially if I'm trying to write dialogue. I'll be like, that person wouldn't say that. So, so it's always good sometimes to have somebody to correct you. But don't want to swallow that too fast. So that's our ghost story for today. So that's going to switch us on to, and actually it's interesting because that kind of fits in with the topic because the guy has a decision to make. Do you want to get in? There's room for one more, or do you want to wait for the next one? Do we move ahead or do we wait, right? That's kind of weird. I mean, that wasn't my intention, but it does kind of dovetail very nicely into what I was going to talk about. So as I mentioned earlier, the kind of, what are we going to call it? Spiritual coaching topic that I have for today has to do with decisions. And that's interesting too, because I think in a lot of people's readings, a lot of the general readings I'm doing for people, and I think even people here have kind of alluded to this in their own readings, that there's this element of decision. We see a lot of this 2 energy. Now it's Libra season, okay? So we have this 2 energy. We have and we usually when we think of Libra, we think of the scales, right? It's balance. It's about balancing 2 things. And so we think about it as balance, but Libra is also the 7th house, right? It's the 7th house of astrology. And the 7th house has to do with relationships. So one of the things that has been said a lot, particularly about the solar eclipse that's just passed, is that a lot of this has to do with relationships, bringing things to light in relationships, things, knowledge coming out. So if there's been, or situations that have supposedly are stuck, sometimes it can bring a little bit of conflict or back and forth in relationships, not necessarily a fatal one, but it can bring up, like if there's been issues that have been simmering under the surface, this kind of energy can bring it back to the surface. So when a lot of places, so you've got this 2 energy, because of course when you're dealing with a relationship, especially if you're in a committed relationship with somebody, it's not just you. I mean, you're not the only one making the decision. I mean, we have to think about our own sovereignty, because there's been a lot here around sovereignty and being sovereign and thinking of things in our, thinking about what our needs are. A lot of times, again, especially with women, and I don't want to overly stereotype and gloss over, but a lot of times women are kind of in the position of feeling like the feminine idea is to yield. So if you have a spouse and that spouse has a different, you want to do A and they want to do B, the tendency sometimes is just to yield and let them, and just do B because, well, okay, you're going to yield to what they do. And it's interesting because if women who kind of stand up and insist it's going to be A, are often portrayed very, very negatively, like, oh, you're steamrolling over your husband or something, or, there's this kind of negativity sometimes that I see, at least in tropes and in things that people, because those are the places where you get the kind of idea of what the cultural attitudes or the cultural norms are. But you got this 2 energy. And the other thing about 2 energy, like the Lover's card in the tarot, the other thing about this energy is that you are, it's Gemini also. It's Gemini and Libra. It's like there's a 2-ness to it. Libra is justice, which is interesting because that has to do with truth and with fairness, okay? With people getting their equal share, things being correctly in balance. And operating in truth. What the truth is, not all these other cards like 7 of Swords and Page of Swords, which are like deceptions and lies and things that you, or things not quite under the surface. In Cartouche, there's generally, I want to say there's 3 cards. There's Nephthys, there's the Sphinx, and then there's Urias. Those are the big 3, you don't quite see what's going on card. One could be someone's keeping a secret. One is that the outcome is that it's not what you expect. And the other is you don't have all the information yet. That's kind of the inflection of all 3 of them. Not in the same order that I actually said, but that idea. And we seem to be in a space now where we are, where we're being faced with decisions, where there's something a decision that we need to make. But at the same time, there's the idea that this is also kind of a liminal space, that we're not the people we were before. We don't want to just go back and do the same old thing. But we don't necessarily know what the new thing is that we have to do, okay? So what do you do when you're in this space and you have to decide? And frequently what you see is cards like the Fool, or cards that just are action cards. I think the Magician has come up a few times. Sometimes it's literally like you've just got to pick a direction and figure it out. And even if it's the wrong direction, at least you're moving in a direction. Now, of course, we've also gotten the message that we are being supported and guided. So if we're really moving in the wrong direction, I think we will know pretty quickly that that's not what we need to do. But I think it's interesting, the idea that most of what we actually need to do in life is not so much about, it's less about action and more about decision. Because like I said, because once you've made a decision, made up your mind what you're going to do, you just do it. I mean, well, procrastination is another thing, I guess. I mean, you could say, yeah, I'm going to do that and I'll do it tomorrow. But you have this thing where you are, when we move into this space where we are, where we have to make decisions. And I feel like, right, like lately, there's a lot of, it's like trying to find your way through somewhere. It's like actually trying to walk through Dublin. I'm going to put it like that. I remember I had a map of Dublin the very first time I was ever there. And that was when I was there for a school trip. But I got there because Neve, who was running the whole thing, gave the wrong dates. I had booked a flight earlier, but it was fine for me because I was like, okay, I'll just get a hotel room and I have an extra day to wander around Dublin before the group gets there, which was totally fine with me. I don't need to have a group. It wasn't like when I went up to the Shetlands where in order to get to the island I needed to get to, you had to time all the ferries exactly right to get to the right places. So that was different. You wanted to be with the group for that. But as far as anything else went, it was just like, And got myself derailed into Shetland. Now, what was I talking about? It was, I was talking about Dublin. All right. So in Dublin, there's what I found. I had a map, okay? And the map looks pretty straightforward. And I mean, there's certain major thoroughfares like O'Connell Street, and when you find the one bridge that they have, what was it? I forget what that the Halfpenny Bridge, I think, or something like that. It's called between the North Quay and the South Quay of Dublin, and and you can walk all along the quay. It's like there's follow the river, really, so to speak, there that goes through there, and I remember, and it's weird because I think I was going to, I think I visited the Guinness factory actually because I had wanted to visit there, and weirdly, the last time I was there, I'm realizing the Guinness factory is right across from Houston Station, And I'm like, why did I not see this the first time I was there? Because the first time I went there and then went to go follow my map to walk back to Dublin, it was like I was going in circles and getting lost. And then you were going places, that could have been the ferries again, now that I think about it. But also, I was going into towns, and they had like these intersections that went like 8 ways. And you're like, what the actual hell? Like, I was going to take a ghost tour that night, and then I thought, no, if they're going to start over in this part of town, I'm never going to find my way back to my hotel. It's going to be, I'm going to make maybe back in my hotel, 3 days from now, I'll still be walking around. So I didn't really want to try to do that in a night in a city I wasn't familiar with. But point being, it's like you walk into those places and there's like intersection. It's not just like you have 2 roads to choose from. It's like there's like 8 roads to choose from, right? And it's like, well, okay. And we have no idea where any of them leads, or if they're just going to get us totally lost, or if they're going to get us to whatever our next destination is going to be. And I don't know, maybe this is why we're kind of told we have to have a spirit of adventure right now, because it may just be like, okay, I'm going to go. You have to rely more on instinct. You don't mess with the Fae here in the UK. Had a terrifying experience once, never again. Yeah, well, this is it. And I've had several in Ireland, and you do have to be very careful. I have had experiences with the Fae down in Devon when I was living weirdly down in Plymouth. Would you think, But as April pointed out the last time she was on this, she said, yeah, Fae are everywhere. So, but where you are especially, there's quite a bit. In Ireland, of course, it's just, I don't know why. I don't think it's necessarily that there's more fairies there. It's just, I think people were more aware of it there. But yeah, so I don't know if that's what was really going on there, because actually in Kent, that's what happened. I was down in Kent with my friend Louise, and we were walking through, there's this woods that's not that far from our house. Was it the Ham Street Woods? I think that might be the ones, if I've got that right. And we were walking, and this is a path she walked with her mom like every single day, pretty much. And somehow we were lost for 3 hours because I'm following her. I've never been there before. And she's like, oh yeah, this goes here. But then all of a sudden we were out farther and farther, and we were seeing like these white forms moving through the woods. And I'm like, okay. But then it was weird because all of a sudden like this hawk just came flying in. And as soon as it zoomed past us, I was like, path's over there. It was like weird. So it was almost like we were shown, like somebody else came in and showed us the way out. So it was very strange. But that was definitely, they can mess you up a lot. But actually, it's interesting that you bring up the Fae, because the runes that I kept pulling this morning, in addition to Eowaz, which is the rune of decisions, was Ansuz, which is the rune of the trickster. And it's kind of a Loki rune. And so the idea here is that the new path we're going to go on is going to be from a surprise connection. That the way forward is not going to be something that we can sit down, analyze the data, and plan. I mean, you can do that. I mean, I'm not saying people can't do that, but for whatever reason, whatever's going on right now, it's not something. It's just you're just gonna make a random decision, and that random decision is going to take you on the right road. So I think those of us who are making decisions and meditating on decisions, I think it's best not to, and actually, I think this was a conversation I was having last night, not to put as much mental energy into it right now as we think we normally would. Because when we know that we're faced with something, a lot of times that's when the mind gets involved and says, oh, okay, there's this situation, you have to do X. There's this situation, you have to do Y. Or if you don't know, the mind starts making up all these stories like, oh, well, if you do this, maybe this will happen, and this will happen, and then this will happen, and this will happen, and the world will end. And yeah, your mind kind of takes you in these directions. Or if you're feeling a particular way about something, if you're feeling, because a lot of us, I think, are feeling discomfort right now. And whenever there's change, even if it's change that we want, it can be very uncomfortable. And so we kind of feel like we don't know, and we think that discomfort may be evidence that we shouldn't make a change. Or then we feel like we have to kind of beat ourselves up a little bit and say, well, I shouldn't feel uncomfortable. This is what I should do. And really, we're going to be going through a lot of different emotions and things. And that's just it. Emotions and intuition are not necessarily the same thing. Sometimes your emotions can be a reflection of your intuition, but often it's the mind it's your reaction to the mind kicking in and going, I want to do that, I want to do this. So it's always kind of a thing you want to think about. That is that when you find yourself when you find yourself feeling that kind of discomfort, sometimes all you can do is kind of step back from it and just recognize, like, okay, I'm uncomfortable right now because there's something I don't know. And we don't like being uncomfortable. That's why we want to go ahead. And sometimes the discomfort is actually there to push us to make a decision too. But one of the things you don't want to do is suppress. You don't want to start suppressing, saying, it's like the person who goes through something terrible or has a terrible loss and then says, no, I'm fine, it's good. No, that person did that, but it's fine. It's like the people I used to hear, I remember, I don't know why it's calling to mind a homily that was said in church ages ago with this priest who I absolutely cannot stand because he was so sanctimonious. But him getting on the altar and talking about a woman whose child was killed accidentally by a truck driver, and the truck driver coming to the hospital and being upset and begging for forgiveness. And the woman said to him, as a mother, it's hard to forgive you, but as a Christian, I forgive you. And I'm just like, shut up, really. I mean, I just find that, because that's not real forgiveness. Forgiveness means I'm going to let go of anger against you. Forgiveness is not just like, I'm going to stand here and be the good person. That's not forgiveness. No, you're mad at that person until you're not. And, you may say to the guy, thank you for your apology, but I ain't over this yet. And one day, maybe you will be, because, obviously it wasn't deliberate, and at some point you would get over that, right? But but this idea, sweeping it under the rug. Yeah, exactly. Sweeping it under the rug. Kind of having this thing of just kind of like, nope, this is the way I should feel about it. I should feel about it, so I'm going to feel this way. Like, those are not the kind of decisions, because it becomes fake. Eventually, at some point, what's going to end up bursting out, or what you're going to do is you're going to look at somebody else, and it's going to be reflected, and you're going to say, that person shouldn't be this way, or shouldn't be feeling this way, or shouldn't be doing this. But really what you're saying is, this is the way I feel, or this is what I should be doing. So, yeah, I mean, we have to, sometimes you just have to let yourself sit with your feelings, but also sometimes recognize that your feelings are a reaction to change. Especially the more fixed you are. There's a lot of Taurians on here, and if you happen to be a Taurian or a fixed sign of any stripe, it's very hard to change. When you want to move somewhere, like I remember the first time I moved to England to go to school, I wanted to go so badly, and when I got there, I was just a mess because I was very fixed. I was very a homebody kind of person. Now, I'm not really quite so fixed now, although I know that the first time I moved into a place after a while, like the first time I moved into the place I was living in Devon for like several months, it felt weird, but I said to myself, okay, it's going to feel weird. It's going to feel weird because this is not what you're used to. This is not your routine, okay? When you're breaking away from your routine, it can be uncomfortable. And it's not like, a lot of times we assume we're going to go into a new place and it's like, the sun's going to shine and all this stuff is, yes, you can relate. Yeah. And we always think like, it's just going to be, unicorns and roses and, and it's not usually. A new place can be scary. A new place, even if it's a change we're welcoming, even if the old was like, I need to get away from this is intolerable, right? So I think in terms of making decisions, I think we gotta consider that we can get the adventure card. So, you're going off on an adventure. Might better to look at it with the eyes of a child than that kind of fixed position of, but it's not this, or it has to be this way, or it has to be that way. We have to recognize that there's going to be a certain amount of discomfort in what we're doing. Okay, when we make a decision. And you also got to recognize that sometimes even if you initially don't make the right decision, you somehow are going to get to where you're going to be. Whatever's happening here, you've got to allow serendipity. It's not like you have to sit down and look out, be vigilant. That's another aspect of like the Nine of Wands, like the guy who's just like looking around all the time. It's like you don't need to do that. It's just you just get up and do your thing and see where it goes. We're going to do our reading for today, and I decided to use the Halloween tarot for today because we're getting close to Halloween. So, and this one has a cat on every single card, so that works for me. There's cat on the outside of the card too. It's cute. Okay, so let's see. So what do we want to have for today? I'm going to do the same spread that I normally do with the Osho Zen, but I'll just do it with these cards. Give it a good shuffle. Yeah, just kind of talking about decisions. That's what came up for me today. Oops. Ooh. Okay. Okay. Oh my goodness. Wow. And you know what? The exact right number of cards just came out. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah, you're gonna laugh at this. Okay. So our center card is the Four of Imps here in this one, which is actually the Four of Wands. Okay. So what do I've said about the Four of Wands? Awesome. There's like a gate. Okay. And, you know, people call this the 1111 card. And I think I've said that to people before, and they say, oh, why is that? Now you can kind of see it, you know, the 1111. I mean, you can see it in the Rider-Waite one too. But there's like a gate to be passed through. But the Four of Wands represents kind of being at a place of accomplishment. It's like at a place of celebration. I mean, it's a good card, but fours are about stability. So stability is really what's in question here. Stability, what we've achieved, what we've accomplished, where we're at. When we get the Four of Wands, it says, okay, you know, we've done stuff. We've done some stuff in our life. You know, we've made decisions. We've done things. We've built a certain type of life for ourselves, right? And the inner feeling of which we're unaware is the Eight of Bats, which is the Eight of Swords. Okay, which is exactly what I said. This is the way the mind gets us all tangled up. Okay, it's where we get into this headspace of we get ourselves stuck. But the thing is, we're not necessarily really stuck. Like I said, like this person, even in the other card, this person's wrapped up in something that almost looks like. I mean, it's supposed to be like mummy wrappings, I guess, but it's almost like toilet paper. You know, I mean, strictly speaking, you could get out of that. The Mother Peace Tarot. This comes to mind for me. The Mother Peace Tarot has a very interesting interpretation of this card also. The Mother Peace round deck. And what it is it's a woman standing there with her sword drawn and she's facing a brick wall. Okay? And there's a gate that's open on the other side and there are a couple of crows sitting on the top. And the meaning that they have to the card is approaching something too directly and thinking you are boxed in. So here she is fighting with this brick wall when the opening is actually behind her. So it's not really that she has to fight her way through this brick wall. There's another way out. I mean, you just have to turn around, you know? A lot of these cards, even the Two of Swords, the person's blindfolded and they've got these two swords across their chest. But if they take the blindfold off and turn around, you can see that there's another opportunity. Five of Cups. We're staring at the spilled cups. Turn around. Four of Cups. There's three cups that we're staring at. Look to the side. There's another one right there. A lot of times it's a matter of looking at it and looking at it differently, right? The external feeling of which we are aware is the Wheel of Fortune, okay? Interesting idea for Wheel of Fortune here. But so Wheel of Fortune, this is change that is inevitable. And this is why I think we're being pushed in this direction of change, like of making decisions and going with change. Because you're not, you can stand there and fight all you want. The change is still going to happen. There's still changes that are happening. That's a fun wheel, yeah. It's interesting. You have this guy kind of strapped to it, but you have these little skulls around it too, which I think is really kind of cool. Yeah, and there's a little black cat in the corner. He shows up in every single card. Like in this one, there he is in the bottom here. And in this one, he's got the little paper wrapped around him down here. And then we have our decision card, the Two of Imps, right? And there's the cat again over here. But yeah, so the Two of Imps is just the idea of, you've got these two kind of little imps kind of facing off with each other almost, and you've got this kind of almost mediator type individual, whatever that is there. Looks almost like it's supposed to be a scarecrow or something. But the idea is, and I love that deck. I broke out my Horror Oracle yesterday. Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, this is the time of year for that. I mean, you can break it out other times of year, but this is a lot of fun. Yeah, and we see the two wands have fire with them. So with this though, what I think is interesting about this card though is it's the idea of the adversary but there's somebody who's like they're kind of opposing each other, but somebody's bringing them together. So it's almost like the idea of the way we want to consider what's paradoxical. When you think about something only one way, there's my view and then there's your view, and your view is opposed to my view. It's like more like, what's the other way to look at this? Is there another way to, it's not necessarily about compromise. It's more about considering, trying to get out of a way of thinking that is just, that is just so very singularly focused. Looks like the gingerbread man. He does kind of look like a gingerbread man, doesn't he? That's interesting. Love it. Yeah, it's, it's his round face. I don't know if he's meant to be, with this particular deck, I'm trying to think what the other characters are, if that's what he's exactly meant to be, but certainly, certainly his face does look like that. Flexibility? I think flexibility to some degree, yeah. You don't, I think when we're not willing to consider other ways of doing things, when we just say, well, okay, this has to be done, but this is the way it must be done. And we may have social pressure that tells us this is the way it must be done. Or if you do it differently, well, that's stupid, that's foolish, that's not going to work, it's this and it's that. And the thing is, a lot of times we don't really know that. We don't necessarily know that, depending on the situation, really. But there's this idea here that, you are, the Two of Imps is almost like the Two of Wands is like you almost have, you're getting prepared to move out. You're making the decision about where you're going. And the idea is that you have all of the preparation. Like, it's not like you have to, it's a little bit different from these cards that say you don't have all the information yet. They're like, no, you're ready to make this move. And interestingly, the outcome card is the Hermit. Okay, we got the kind of mad scientist here. Cat once again. Skull looks very, very happy here too. But this is almost, those who were in class the other night, this almost reminds us a little, in a kind of a weird way, of Joanna's Wizard, right? Because she was talking about the wizard versus the witch and the iconography. This is actually just more of the mad scientist. But the mad scientist is still the chemist, right? Is the one who is trying to make these potions, but not in the way that the hedge witch or the natural witch would make potions, right? That was what we were talking about. And it's interesting because, the mad scientist, think about being too inflexible, not open to possibility. Yeah, well, I think this is saying actually to be open to that, to be open to what the possibilities are. And I think the Hermit here is, that kind of what I'm feeling about this is that when we think about the mad scientist is somebody who decides he's gonna cook something up that's crazy. Okay? He's a person who wants to do something that just seems, and a lot of times in horror movies is the guy who's doing something really horrible. So, but this guy looks nice. He looks kind of happy. And he's, so it's not that he's cooking up something that's nefarious, but he's kind of using his skills and his knowledge to do something that people think is crazy, right? Stuck in a rut. Yeah, well, that's it too. I did get the rune Esau today too, which is about being stuck in a rut, quite literally. But it's about breaking out of that. So breaking out of that, there's going to be an inevitable turning point. Okay, there's going to be an inevitable change here, and so we don't want to be trapped in our minds on this, and because that's the thing. Like, we can talk about this today, and then people could go and say, okay, I have to make a decision, and I've got to think about it, and I've got to make it this way. It's like, you don't want to do that. You want to kind of step back and just be like, okay, there's decisions, and you just kind of move forward, and then. And sometimes they literally just doing something unimportant, or doing something, or just doing the normal stuff that you're supposed to do, and time to change it up. Yeah, and then you will, and then the thing is, when you leave the space for that, when your mind is continually trying to fill in the blanks, you don't have the space for the new idea to come in. I find that a lot of times I will suddenly get great ideas, like while I'm cleaning the house or something, like just doing something regular thing that I do, and just say, okay, I don't know what else to do, but I know I have to get rid of this. Oh my God, thank you for saying it again. Yeah, you're welcome. It's like, this is something that you have to do. Be the observer and see where it takes you. Yeah, exactly. You have to be an observer, and we're not good at observing because we always want to do, but before you can do, you have to decide. You have to decide what the action is. And you may not want to make decisions based on what your mind has you tangled up in. There's this element of needing to, we usually see the Hermit card as having to think very deeply about something. But I think we're really just stepping back, and it's not that we have to sit there for long times and think. Meditation actually might be the thing, because meditation is where we try to take a distance from the thoughts and let the thoughts just do their thing. And that's what I mean. They just run and run and run, and they're going to go, and you can either get dragged around on it, or you can kind of be in the center. And most of the time, the way that our lives go, because it's not a monotonous, like, level playing field. You know, it's like you're going through life, and all of a sudden there's a turn here, or there's a hill here, or there's a drop off here. You know, you're not. It's kind of like you just kind of have to be in the present, ready for what comes next. And in order to make decisions, it's just kind of like, okay, you just kind of got to be where you are and just do whatever comes next, and then see what comes in, what you have the space for it. You know, what you have the space for in your mind. It's hard to describe, because it's not like it's, again, the whole point is it's not a step-by-step process. The whole point is that you are finding your way in it, and you are, but you're not doing it by looking back at the past and saying, well, these are the steps I took before. And you're not telling yourself, like, well, this is the way it's supposed to be, right? When we become stuck in a routine, things become mindless. Stop paying attention. Right. And self-consciousness is part of it too. Yeah, because you are when you're self-conscious about things, then you're always, that's not the same as mindfulness. Self-consciousness and mindfulness are not the same thing. Mindfulness is just you're in the moment and aware of what you're doing. Like they'll talk about the kind of Zen things that people will do, like go down and wash dishes and just pay attention to washing dishes. Like literally watch what you're doing. Literally feel the dishes in your hand. Literally feel like kind of just be in the moment. Yeah, I mean, and we can't maintain that for long periods of time, because then the mind comes in. It's like, oh, well, I got to go here, and I got to do this today, and I got to do that. Yeah, and this is the way our minds operate. But rather than fighting with the mind, it's just kind of like letting yourself meander, because sometimes when you're facing that brick wall, you meander enough, and you'll find the opening will make itself apparent. But if you're continually still focused on that brick wall, you're not going to find that other entrance. So that's. And then because if somebody does a reading for you and says, oh, watch out, there's going to be a missed opportunity, then it's like, okay, then we start looking around like, oh my God, what am I doing? Am I doing it wrong? The way you're not going to miss an opportunity is to just let it happen. To let it happen and let the decision be made kind of from that. Yes, new ways of doing that could be beneficial. Yeah, well, right. And the thing is, but you won't know what that new way is. Like, I can't sit here and tell you what that new way is. It's like something that will occur to you. Something that will come up and that will occur to you. So, I'm trying to remember what happened the other day. I literally had an example of this the other day where there was something I was mentally going over in my mind, and finally I just said, fuck it. I'm not thinking about it anymore. And I just, or I was just in a certain mood or a certain state of mind. And then while I was in that state of mind, it was like, I was just like, all right, well, you know what? It's Saturday. I got to clean the bathroom or whatever. And so I started doing that. And as soon as I just focused more on that and not on the other, it was like all of a sudden as I'm walking, it was almost like, ooh, the answer to whatever it was just came into my head. Yeah. Unfold. Yes, exactly. So yeah, it's not, these are ways that happen. Remember that this is about the unexpected. So you don't need to kind of be looking around all the time for the unexpected. You just, it's like a lot of things. It's like falling in love too. It's just kind of like, oftentimes it's not when you're out there actively looking that you find it. It's when it'll just suddenly appear and you just kind of go, oh, and in a time when you're being totally natural and being totally yourself, right? And not trying to be a certain thing. It's almost that kind of an energy. Don't try to be a certain thing. Just let it happen. So anyway, I hope this was helpful today. We're a little past time, so which we seem to do. I don't know if it's just because I talk too much, which could well be the case. But anyway, I hope all you guys have a really wonderful Friday. I can't believe we're at Friday again already. Weren't we just at Monday? Anyway. yeah, so anyway, yeah, and I'll be here over the weekend. Some of you I'm going to see in Intuitive Development on Sunday. Some of you I'm also going to see next Wednesday in Joanna's, the follow-up discussion. And people who are in the class, yeah, definitely give some, like, think about what we did lecture on and what questions you might have, or what might have come out of what we talked about in the lecture. Any thoughts and things that you've had, thoughts, reflections, questions, yeah, they'll be good. Oh, you're welcome. And yeah, you're welcome. And I will see all of you. I know, Jenny, I know I'm going to talk to you tomorrow. So yeah, so anyway, I will talk to you guys. Hope you have a wonderful day, and see you tomorrow. Okay. Darn, I forgot to register. You still have time, Joanne. It's okay.